Hi, welcome to Historically Drinking. Join me for some booze-soaked history and the cocktails it inspired me to create. The coronavirus pandemic doesn't seem to have slowed down our drinking. There are lines in front of the liquor stores. Every other Instagram post is loaded with cocktails. Thinking about the way that we're drinking during this pandemic, made me wonder about drinking during another pandemic, the infamous Black Plague. The plague ravaged Europe for 300 years, relenting and returning over and over and over again, starting in the mid-1400s. That original wave killed half of the European population. The last big wave to hit was in 1665 and 66 and hit the city of London especially hard. By the time the year was over, 15 to 20% of the population had perished. Imagine the London of these plague days. The streets were paved with cobblestones. Houses were squished together. The pavement was covered with the slime dumped from the windows of the houses. The Thames River had a noxious smell that filled the city. Normally, the city was buzzing with activity and loud, but because of the plague, many people had left the city, and those that were still remaining were staying mostly inside of their houses to avoid the sickness. So it was eerily silent. But people were still drinking. What were they drinking? It actually wouldn't have looked much different than what we drink today in some ways. They drank French wine. They drank low ABV beers called small beers. There was a lot of home distillation happening, and many wives had their own recipes for cures for the plague. There was also commercial distillation. Brandy was very popular, and gin was gaining in popularity. This was about 60 years from the notorious gin craze. We're starting to work towards that now. So what was this gin like? Nothing like the London dry gins of today. This gin was an immigrant from Holland, a copycat of their Genever, which, when made in the old country, was delicious. Made in the new country, usually not so much. So how did Londoners of the day drink their gin? Not with tonic. That was a long way off from being invented. They didn't drink cocktails. Those were also far in the future, as was the idea of putting ice into drinks. Punch was an idea that was starting to come around, but most people wouldn't have heard of it at this point. So what did they do to make this pretty gross stuff palatable? They added things that were delicious. They added sweeteners, fruits, herbs, spices. Different merchants all had their own recipes. They made their own special gin variations. So, armed with that knowledge, I have created what I think might have been a good 1665 gin drink. I started with 10 ounces of water, added 3 ounces of unfiltered honey, put in a selection of herbs, including bay leaf, mint, green onion, sage, and fennel. Once this herbed honey nectar was finished, I combined 3.5 ounces of that with 1 ounce of this modern day Genever made by Bols to create the Abracorona. Oh, why the Abracorona, you ask? Well, the word abracadabra for hundreds of years was given much magical power. It was thought to ward off evil. And during this time of the Great Plague in London, talismans were sold containing the words that people would wear and carry to help them ward off the evil that was the Great Plague. So for today's modern day pandemic, we have the Abracorona. You can find all of the recipes below, also my sources. Thank you so much for watching Historically Drinking. I hope I see you again.